Welcome to Masters of Side Hustles, the podcast where we explore how to use powerful tactics to build businesses of all shapes and sizes. I'm your host, Zach Richardson. In each episode, I sit down with entrepreneurs to uncover how they've used these tactics to build successful businesses. In this episode, we sit down with Gordon Jones. Gordon is the founding dean of Boise State's College of Innovation and Design. Prior to his role at Boise State, Gordon was the founding managing director of Harvard's Innovation Lab. Gordon has a breadth of experience in both large Fortune 500 companies as well as early-stage startups. He spent much of his career at Gillette and Procter & Gamble, but also had leadership positions in 3 successful upstarts. In this episode, Gordon compares and contrasts big businesses with small businesses and side hustles. He references his own experiences as well as some of the experiences of students he's worked with at Boise State and Harvard. Let's begin by learning more about Gordon's background.
Did my undergraduate degree at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. Sort of a lot of my summers working in both business and in education, and faced that choice coming out of college. Went to teach high school in Central Arizona. Actually turned down a large Fortune 500 company to go take a role as director of college placement at a little 200-person high school on a 40,000-acre cattle ranch. Ended up actually director of college placement at 23 and had to redesign the whole university application approach and how we got students from high school to college. But I've always spent my career between both education and business. I did grad school at Stanford Business School, ended up with some large Fortune 500 consumer goods companies, Gillette, which was acquired by Procter & Gamble, and had a stint with them. Did work on internal innovation, both on product innovation, commercializing product innovations, and then did work with their oral care division around acquisition integrations, joint venture work, and a couple different startups was involved in outside of the large organization arena. I left Gillette 3 times. One was a company that had already been established in the education technology field called Family Education Network. Came in really late stage, right before they were acquired by Pearson, which is a large education company. I then left a second time to take on a role at a more senior level, a mid-career startup that had grown from 0 to ultimately $100 million in revenue in 5 years, but I got to know the founders, and I went in and headed up sales and marketing and some other functions. And that was a pest control product that used a technology out of MIT. It was very interesting. It was sort of a much more chemistry than pest control per se. And then my third time was I did a version 2.0 of that mosquito pest protection product with a family office and investor group out of Texas. Mid-career, made him flip over back to higher ed. Went to Harvard University in 2010 to start up a new initiative for them called the Harvard Innovation Lab. It's also a chance for me to marry my love of working with entrepreneurs and innovators, as it was the university's attempt to aggregate all different kinds of problem solvers and innovators from across the university in pursuit of their ideas, realizing that lots of different functional backgrounds are necessary to create good teams and good outcomes. And the Harvard Innovation Lab was a special chapter for 5 years, and then had a chance to come here to Boise State to found a new college that was focused on both catalyzing and innovating higher ed itself.
Gordon has spent his career in both big businesses and small businesses. His experiences have taught him that there are ways in which the 2 types of businesses are both alike and different. Gordon has identified one of the biggest ways big businesses differ from small businesses is their approach to risk. Big businesses try to mitigate risk in order to protect their existing brands. As Gordon will uncover in this episode, it is precisely big businesses' imperative to mitigate risk that creates tremendous opportunities for small businesses.
I think at the end of the day, it's about opportunity identification. I think there's a lot more risk mitigation large organizations take on, and they need to, because there's a lot to lose when you're already making a lot. We'd spend a lot of money on market research. But why did we do that? It wasn't so much to truly prove that we knew how much sales this new joint venture would produce in sales. It was really to make sure that we wouldn't embarrass ourselves or our brand name or hurt the established businesses we had, because we were going to put on a brand name, Gillette. on that package. And Gillette had a lot of impact in people's lives. They were buying multiple products. And if this product really didn't pan out, or it somehow didn't fulfill what we thought it would, we had a lot more to lose and a certain amount to gain. Enough to gain, we were willing to do it. But make no mistake, there's a lot of people who make their careers in larger organizations who are designed and asked to focus on how not to lose rather than how to win. I think that's going to be very different than when you talk about those entrepreneurs or more startup folks. I was running a specialty oral care group at Gillette. Now, Gillette owned a brand, Oral-B, large oral care brand. And we were looking at children's oral care, and I ran the dental floss side of that business. And there was an opportunity we were bringing out children's toothbrushes and children's toothpaste, but what about children's dental floss? There was a desire to go make a children's dental floss, and we had went out to license Disney's characters, Buzz Lightyear and the princesses from Disney's portfolio. And we were able to consummate that, but there was a lot of focus on the design for children, because these were actually fixed dental floss products. So the children were not going to have to actually pull out dental floss. They were pre-fixed in a holder, and children could use a plastic molded figurine of their favorite character and just use that pre-fixed strand of dental floss to floss. And we would spend many, many hours, many meetings, people flying internationally, top paid engineers from our R&D group in Germany who would fly in. I remember meetings and listening to, frustration that the angle was not optimal and the roundness of the protection bumpers weren't perfect, and all that could do, back to people who make their careers thinking about what could go wrong, not necessarily what could go right. But in fairness, perhaps they saw things I didn't see. But that's one example where I think, what could have taken us months took many, many months. I think of another one. I did a joint venture with Kimberly-Clark. It was a product called Brush Ups, and I had spent right up until the launch on that business. That was a product where we were using a technology from Kimberly-Clark. It was actually a fascinating product because it was a high-density air filter that was used primarily in hospital air filtration systems that Kimberly-Clark sold a lot of products to hospitals. And it had a textured surface to it. It was hydrophobic, which means it actually repels moisture. And they figured out when you rub that surface against your teeth, it actually collects plaque, akin to what toothbrushes will do. It'll free up plaque, which is the point of brushing your teeth, is to get that off before it hardens. And they had the elastic backing of diapers that they made. They make brands in the diaper business. And so elastic backing ultrasonically welded to this high density air filter could remove plaque and slip it over your finger. And it was like a cotton ball if you put it in your mouth. I mean, it didn't taste very good. The mouth feel is the term we used. But what I knew, we had running the dental floss line, I knew how we created mint flavor on dental floss. And actually we were able to marry our ability to attach mint flavor to these cotton ball like things and actually give people a more pleasant, fresh feel while they clean their teeth on the go. So it became an on the go product. We spent a significant amount of research trying to dimensionalize sales and, again, risk mitigation back to that point. And it was a perfect example where we were stepping into something that felt like it was such the unknown. On the go teeth cleaning, no toothpaste, no sink required. And I remember spending about $200,000 on just trying to understand how many people would buy it. I kept thinking to myself, why we're already frankly committed to this relationship. And it was designed, again, I understand I can go back and forth on reasons, but fundamentally we spent a lot of money trying to figure out with precision that would never be perfect. Couldn't we have deployed that against a better sales promotion strategy or other avenues? And it's another example where we were in a defensive posture rather than offensive posture. I think another more interesting aspect too about risk mitigation in large organizations is not just examples specifically of spending where you didn't have to. I also think it's just in the organizational sluggishness or design of organizations. Because another example where risk mitigation occurs when you're going to take these new products, whether you take oral care and Oral-B, back to this example of this past business unit I've been a part of, just the sheer effort of bringing a new product to market with a sales team. We have to use the same sales team who sell the everyday products, toothbrushes and other items. You're now getting layers of people involved who themselves may be at cross incentivization to actually back the new thing. Unless that group is properly incentivized, the eagerness with which they're going to back the new, they'll get you in. Of course they're going to get some distribution, but they're going to be the first ones who say, well, if they think it's at all a problem, they're going to say, well, let's actually get back to toothbrushes now or some other discussion, because they can't afford to risk relationships that they're stewards of. But it's another factor where there's waste in the system and inefficiency for the sole purpose of seeing solutions that meet a need, or you believe they've met enough of a need that they're worth actually putting out there.
The speed at which big organizations tend to move as a consequence of their risk mitigation is exactly why Gordon sees opportunity for small businesses to compete.
Ultimately, you're going up against large organizations with your innovations if you're an entrepreneur. And sometimes we're very concerned about large organizations stealing that idea or crushing me. And, elephants don't move as fast or as nimbly as more nimble small animals. Now, you got to be careful you don't get stepped on, but it's often in slow motion. It's slower than you may think as an entrepreneur because we're so focused on how quickly we can move. Often, at least I find. But you may overestimate how quickly the large player may be able to actually react.
Although small organizations have a speed advantage, large organizations have advantages that small ones don't. Gordon sees two particular advantages of large organizations that allow them to win: process and scale.
I would argue that what many people associate as tremendous domain expertise in large organizations. A lot of people will say Procter & Gamble is just an expert marketer. They're good marketers. There's a lot of data there. But I would actually argue their scale had as much or more, frankly, to do with success. They owned 30% of the store sales in some grocery, or they're the only player that could actually sit down with a Walmart and say, let's talk as equal to equals, because I'm worth so much of your sales and you're worth so much of mine. Most other players, it was very asymmetrical. But work gets done in those organizations. It's highly process driven. At a small startup level, it's a much less necessary component, I believe. You need to be focusing on rapidly ensuring that you're meeting a need that people will pay you for, and that value is as robust and as defensible as possible. Start there, and then you can back in process over time. Large organizations, process is necessary. It's a critical ingredient. When you have thousands of people, one of my observations from being at Procter & Gamble, and at that time I ran an international group, I covered multiple continents outside the US and Europe. I was always struck and impressed by the uniformity with which work was done in Procter & Gamble. They're very effective. You go into an office in Bangkok, in Australia, Singapore, Korea, I've been in all of them. They all actually look very similar. They look similar. People have the similar nomenclature. It's the idea that large organizations, those organizations that can get the most number of people to march in lockstep in their local market, but still connect to the global supply chain and the organization, they win.
But according to Gordon, big businesses and small businesses are not completely different. A key similarity lies in their goal to meet the needs of customers.
I think the longer I've gone, I see actually more similarities than differences between innovation and new product development in both large organizations and the startup world. I think they both, at the end of the day, are focused on meeting needs of customers. Large organizations tend to capitalize on known needs, and they've created competitive advantage. The competitive advantage generally is scale, the ability to outspend, to create mind share, and to create preference for those that are already established needs. I think the competitive advantage on the small side is my ability to really meet emerging needs more quickly. The cost of technology is so much lower that I can actually implement things that large organizations used to be the domain only because they had the money to spend. And now a lot of those barriers are being unlocked. And so your ability as an individual or a smaller organization to be quickly responsive and adapt, meet the large micro needs. Again, large organizations' crumbs are a company's meal. We used to always say, well, you want to compete with Walmart? Forget about competing on price. But can you bake the local favorite bread? Because all Walmart's going to sell is white bread and whole wheat bread from a national player. That's why I chuckle when I see McDonald's offering craft coffees, or make your own burgers now is the new thing. Is that really going to compete with some of the more interesting craft folks who are out there doing custom burgers, the pack outs, the interesting burger shops? My guess is for at least a lot of the younger generation, it looks a little stale.
Gordon believes that side hustles are a great form of small business to capitalize on the opportunities that big businesses miss. In addition to his successful larger scale startups, Gordon has continually pursued small side hustles throughout his career. His first side hustle was inspired by a product at Gillette that to Gillette was immaterial, but to an individual side hustler like Gordon was a huge opportunity.
The idea of a side hustle that creates ancillary income, you get to put yourself in the seat where you are the conceiver, the deliverer, and the recipient of that value. You've met a need people will actually pay for. I found it to be tremendously enjoyable. And it takes me right back to my first year on the job at Gillette. I was an assistant product manager for shaving in the U.S. for women. Now, on that P&L, I noticed there was a little line item, and we had all these different brand names for women's shaving products. But at the bottom was a product called Widget. And at first I thought it was just a code name or some other name. Because what the heck, Widget? That's used in every classroom. I mean, what is Widget? Well, it turns out we actually had a product called Widget. It's a little plastic portable product where people could just scrape off stickers or things that they had. I looked at it and it had $7 million in sales in the U.S., which was a rounding error. And the finance manager said, you don't have to pay any attention to it. Women's shaving delivers many, many millions of dollars. And the funny thing I remember was I was totally drawn to that line item. I said, tell me more about Widget. Why is this even on here? It's not even a women's shaving product. Well, we market it and sell it in the same aisle as women's shaving products because we don't really have any other place to sell it. Our sellers talk to the buyers of shaving products, not the hardware section or the front checkout or 5 other parts of a store where you might think it should be sold. And the way they buy in these stores is people have categories. So if you don't talk to that category, you're not anywhere else in the store. And we didn't have any relationships there. So they just offered it. And I remember thinking, gosh, how could I take this private, or would Gillette ever sell it to me? And I didn't at that time think that was possible. And I'm not sure I was prepared to just leave that role. So the side hustle came in and I said, well, I'm going to go develop my own product on this. And I took about 9 months and my own money. And I went through and developed this ToughTech window and glass scraper. And ironically, it's one of the best learnings I had. It was about 3, 4, 5 years of focus. I was so much more focused on how sales occur. All of a sudden in women's shaving, I was able to talk to salespeople much more effectively because I was actually thinking with my side hustle, how's this going to work? And I was working on that at night, odd hours. I was inviting friends from the company to give me feedback. It actually got me farther down where I could have had something commercialized. And for a variety of reasons I won't get into, that one didn't work. Now I have other side hustles that are getting traction. But my point is, if you can learn how to focus on opportunity identification with the lenses of the entrepreneur, you're going to make yourself, if nothing else, you're going to make yourself a better employee of where you are working if you are in a larger organization. And that's just the base benefit. The real benefit is, can you actually get traction with it? And if you can get traction, there's a whole nother side of both income and then opportunity, because your side hustle, A, it might be something really big. B, you may end up with 3 other secondary side hustles. You may be able to equip others around you who are entrepreneurially inclined but don't have a side hustle who want to adopt yours. And then you have a whole village of side hustlers you get the benefit of working with multiples of. And I can go on and on. So to me, it doesn't matter what field you're in. It's where do you see the opportunity and where do you have some passion points? You got to have some focus. But to me, it all goes back to Widget, the first year on the job.
In addition to building his own side hustles and startups, Gordon has had the opportunity to work with numerous students at both Boise State and Harvard who have reaped the benefits of pursuing their own side hustles. He's even met extremely young side hustlers in his own neighborhood, proving that anyone with a solution to a customer need can build a side hustle.
I think the other thing I'd want to emphasize around side hustles is, and I think it's the beauty of generically speaking entrepreneurship or innovation and innovators, nobody cares where you're from if you have a solution that really meets a need. And so I'm a big believer at the college here at Boise State I'm involved in. Where can we help any student apply the ideas they're learning in the classroom? For the added benefit of learning, that's kind of imputed in what I'm saying. But I love to see students of all ages and stages applying those ideas and coming up with things that actually end up supporting them economically. I had a student at Harvard, one of my first students at the Harvard Innovation Lab, came in and as almost an afterthought, he was telling me about, he had a side hustle he'd started in high school. And I said, well, what is it? His first name was Connor. I said, Connor, what is it? And he said, well, he was almost sheepish about it, like he was embarrassed. Because again, at Harvard, maybe everyone's focused on Mark Zuckerberg. So if I haven't discovered my Facebook, I'm a less than entrepreneur. And that's me reading in. It may not have been his narrative, but he looked kind of sheepish. He says, well, actually, I've got this app on the App Store for Apple, and it's flashcards. I said, what do you mean flashcards? What is it? He goes, well, to be honest, it's actually the number 1 flashcard app in the App Store. And people pay 99 cents for it. It preps them for the SAT. Math and word flashcards. And I said, at the time, I said, just give me a sense, like, how much do you make on this? He goes, well, people can upsell. They can buy a $4.99, super duper version. It was sort of a pseudo freemium model. It was somewhere in the $50,000 to $100,000 a year. that this was producing for him. And my jaw almost hit the ground. And I was thought to myself, oh my goodness, how many people would love that kind of a sheepish side hustle? And then I had another student come into me as a grad student who's going to be a lawyer, but he said, hey, I'm just curious, what should I do with this side hustle I have? I go, what is it? He goes, well, I have a family member who works for an airline. A lot of flight attendants and pilots schedule their months out. And this DOS prompt system that the airlines use is ground-based. It's impossible, it's very difficult to use. And they like to pre-schedule out. I actually was able to interface with their data feed. They're willing because I had some close connections. Again, think competitive advantage. Where do you have access that other people don't? In his case, family member worked there. The airline was willing to give him the data feed. He was able to convert it into a mobile iPad or iPhone or Android. Flight attendants, pilots can download schedules, sit on the flight when they have free time on break, autopilot, or you've done the food cart service. You can sit for 20 minutes in the back with your friends and pre-schedule, preload, and then go out. And when you get to the airport, you can reconnect and download your preferences. About $100,000 a year. I think about students here at Boise State, from personal finance to affiliate marketing to laser cut wood puzzles. Not everything has to be tech-centric. Tech-enabled, yeah, human-machine interaction is going to be a pretty dominant theme in the future. Internet's not a fad, so it's always good to have familiarity there. And it's a great vehicle for distribution and creating awareness. But not everybody who thinks when they start off baking pita chips or baking cookies that they're going to actually be on the future of making Stacy's pita chips or Famous Amos cookies. So even your smallest, most basic ideas. I have a kid in my neighborhood, a friend of my son's, he's probably a third or fourth grader now. He goes around and takes orders for cookies. He'll do them for birthday parties, for weekend parties, just for everyday needs, different recipes. He changes them up. He innovates. I've told him he needs to get on in technology, let people pre-order. I love the side hustle. Doesn't matter the age, the stage. Universities are great places. And my goal is to continue to nurture that amidst a broader mandate I have of thinking about where the ball is headed in higher ed. Frankly, it's one of the most exciting parts of my job.
In this episode, we learned how Gordon Jones views big businesses and small businesses in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. We learned how side hustles are a great way for entrepreneurs to start their ventures, as well as the benefits of side hustles beyond potential financial outcomes. In upcoming episodes, we explore specific tactics entrepreneurs have employed to build businesses ranging from 6 figures to 9 figures.